which was written by highly respected Masonic authorities, which describes the secret doctrine of the Masonic Lodge. I am not a Masonic authority and want to make that clear, but the authors selected include men who are widely acclaimed as Masonic authorities. The material consists of photographs or close-ups of Masonic books with critical text underlined. Whenever a new book is introduced, I will show the cover and/or the title page and identify the author. From that point on, I will just show the pages of interest. The quotes are shown in context. I will attempt to let the Masonic authors inform us about the secret doctrine in their own words, and from time to time, I'll ask questions which will be answered by the writings of these highly respected Masons. I will summarize what they have said and try to draw conclusions from it. Before we start discussing the secret doctrine, I want to explain some things about the structure of Freemasonry. This photograph is from the October 8, 1956 issue of Life magazine. That particular issue had a multiple-page, full-color spread showcasing Freemasonry. The Lodge cooperated fully with the magazine. The article was a tremendous public relations piece for them. Each step in this structure represents a degree of Freemasonry. The first three steps at the base represent the Blue Lodge. The Blue Lodge consists of the degrees of Entered Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason. Every Mason is a member of a Blue Lodge. Once a man has attained the Master Mason degree, which might take about 90 days, he is eligible to join either the York Rite or the Scottish Rite or both. The steps on the right side represent the 10 named degrees of the York Rite. The first step is the Mark Master degree. The top degree is the Knights Templar degree. The steps on the left side represent the numbered degrees of the Scottish Rite. The degrees are numbered from 4 to 33. The 33rd degree is an honorary degree which is conferred only to those who have given much to the Scottish Rite. Additionally, some men are named to the 33rd degree because it would be of benefit to the Lodge to be identified with them. A few examples are Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Gerald Ford, and Ernest Borgnine. The 32nd degree is the highest degree for which a man can make application. If anyone applies for the 33rd, they are automatically disqualified. After a man has the 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite, or the Knights Templar degree of the York Rite, he is eligible to join the Shrine. The full name of the Shrine is the Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, and they're represented right here. They are the group which puts on the Shrine Circus and has the burn centers. There are many other Masonic bodies, such as D. Malay, that's an organization for young men, Rainbow Girls, an organization for young girls, Job's Daughters, an organization for older girls, and then the Eastern Star for the wives and daughters of Masons. There are well over 100 different appendant Masonic bodies. We will deal with only the most common ones. Who is the highest authority in Freemasonry? That is the first question we must ask if we are to discover the truth about Freemasonry. In order to ensure accuracy, we must make sure that we consider the materials written by men who are recognized as authorities. This is the building which houses the Grand Lodge of Indiana. Anything that occurs in any Blue Lodge in Indiana is under the auspices of this body. According to the Indiana Monitor, there are 49 Grand Lodges, one for each of the 48 continental states and one for the District of Columbia. Alaska is under the jurisdiction of Washington. Hawaii is under the jurisdiction of California. The head of the Grand Lodge is called the Grand Master. The head of each Blue Lodge is called the Worshipful Master. The Worshipful Master has absolute control of what goes on in his lodge. If he is thought to be guilty of Masonic misconduct, a member may appeal to the Grand Lodge. However, a lodge may not try its own master. The Grand Lodge is the highest authority. Only the Grand Lodge has the authority to issue charters for new lodges, and only they can pull a charter. Every Mason belongs to a Blue Lodge. What is the true nature of the Masonic Lodge? What type of an organization is it? Many people, in fact most people, believe that the Masonic Lodge is a social or a fraternal organization. In order to discover the true nature of the Lodge, we are going to look at a declaration of principles adopted by the Grand Lodge of Indiana. This is the Indiana Blue Book of Masonic Law. We can see that it's adopted by the Grand Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Indiana. And when we look at the bottom of the page, we'll notice that it's published by the authority of the Grand Lodge of Indiana. There is no higher authority. This is a book of Masonic law. It was published by the Grand Lodge to regulate the operation of the Blue Lodges, and other states have similar books. Notice at the bottom that this is published by the authority of the Grand Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Indiana. It's dated 1953. This is page 5 of the Indiana Blue Book of Masonic Law. They list a declaration of principles of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Indiana, and this was adopted in 1939 and revised in May 18, 1949. Now, this same declaration of principles is found in the books of other lodges. One, for example, would be the Grand Lodge of Georgia uses the same declaration of principles. So it's representative of the typical Masonic organization in any state. We notice that Freemasonry is a charitable, benevolent, educational, and religious society. Its only secrets are in its methods of recognition and of symbolic instruction. You're going to see that that last statement is not really true. Further down on page 5, they state, "It is a social organization only so far as it furnishes additional inducement that men may foregather in numbers, thereby providing more material for its primary work of education, of worship, and of charity." Please notice that the primary work of the Lodge is education, worship, and charity. That definition sounds like a reasonable definition for a church, doesn't it? The social nature of the Lodge is secondary, just as it is in a church. This is page 75 of the Indiana Blue Book of Masonic Law. On page 75, the Blue Book tells us that the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide is accepted by the Grand Lodge of Indiana as the official monitor. Each lodge is required to present a copy to each of its newly raised Master Masons at the conclusion of the Master Mason degree work. This is a copy of the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide. It's a small book which will fit in a shirt pocket. It was donated by a man who renounced Freemasonry after he became aware of some of the material that you're going to see. This monitor was presented to him in 1961. This is the title page of the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide, and we notice down at the bottom that it is published by the authority of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Indiana. It is a 1959 copy, and it has the seal of the Grand Lodge. On page 35 of the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide, we find the same declaration of principles that was in the Indiana Blue Book of Masonic Law. And we see they write again, "It is a social organization only so far as it furnishes additional inducement that men may foregather in numbers, thereby providing more material for its primary work of education, of worship, and of charity." We see that each man raised to Master Mason in Indiana is told that the purpose of the Lodge is education, worship, and charity. The fine print at the bottom explains the Declaration of Principles is included in the Monitor to refute willful misrepresentation. The second line that's underlined in red says, "It impresses upon its members the principles of personal righteousness and personal responsibility." At this point, we run into just a bit of a problem because the Bible states, "As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one." The Lost Keys of Freemasonry is highly regarded by Masons and Masonic authorities. Later we will see an endorsement of it. Manly Palmer Hall just died in 1990, and he was a highly respected Masonic author and lecturer. Keep in mind that we're still trying to find out the true nature of the lodge. This is the title page for The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. It's by Manly Palmer Hall. We notice he's also the author of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolical philosophy. And we're going to see that book later. Notice down at the bottom that it is published by the McCoy Publishing and Masonic Supply Company. That's the leading Masonic publisher and supplier. This is page 19 of The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And I want to show you Hall's opinion of the lodge. He says the Masonic order is not a mere social organization, but is composed of all those who have banded themselves together to learn and apply the principles of mysticism and the occult rites. This sign is on the front of a Prince Hall Masonic temple. That's the Black Lodge. Notice that the word temple appears on the sign of this lodge. The sign doesn't say Masonic Clubhouse or Masonic Social Hall, but rather Masonic Temple. This is the entrance to the Grand Lodge of Indiana. Notice above the door the sign Masonic Temple. Even the Grand Lodge entrance acknowledges that the building is a temple. Well, we must conclude that the Masonic Lodge is not a social organization. We are forced to accept this because Masonic authorities have made it clear from their writings. What is the purpose of the Masonic Lodge? This is the Great Teachings of Masonry by Henry L. Haywood. Haywood is a noted Masonic historian from the Lodge of Iowa. He gives us a rather descriptive purpose statement. Haywood is a widely respected Masonic author. He is quoted in the footnotes of the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide, in fact. This is the title page for the Great Teachings of Masonry by Haywood, and we note at the bottom that it also is published by the McCoy Publishing and Masonic Supply Company. This is chapter 33. It's in the chapter on the meaning of initiation and secrecy. Now we're going to see what Haywood says about the purpose of the lodge. He says the fraternity itself exists in order to keep fixed on a man a certain set of influences and in order to bring about certain changes in the world, etc. Its secrecy is the means to that end and helps to make such a purpose possible. That really doesn't sound too bad, does it? Well, we'll come back to this quote later. After the secret doctrine is fully understood, the words of Haywood will take on an ominous meaning. At this point, however, we don't understand them. The problem is we don't have a Masonic paradigm. A paradigm is a model, pattern, or example which explains our understanding of something. We attempt to match new situations with one of our existing paradigms. We are often limited in our understanding when we assume that one of our existing paradigms matches with the reality of something new. As an example, suppose that you have never seen or heard of an airplane. You've ridden in cars and on trains, but for some reason you have not been exposed to the idea of manned flight. Now suppose someone were to get you into a small plane, say a Cessna 150. The pilot starts the engine and begins down the runway. The plane goes faster and faster towards the end of the runway. You may be impressed with the speed and even alarmed if you see the end of the runway fast approaching, but you wouldn't expect that you're about to leave the ground. All you have to model your understanding on is your experience with cars and trains. You are limited by your paradigms. Once the plane leaves the ground, you develop a new paradigm very quickly. The same is true about the material we are looking at here. Don't assume that what you are reading was written by Christians. Masonic writers do not have an orthodox paradigm of Jesus, God, Satan, salvation, baptism, deity, etc. They intentionally clothe their writings in Christian terminology in order that Christians will be limited by their paradigms. In order to understand the nature of Freemasonry, we have to look at Masonic writings from the perspective of someone who does not believe that Jesus is the only Son of God. When reading the Masonic quotes, try to switch paradigms and see how the meanings change. What is the most important symbol of Freemasonry? And what is the meaning of that symbol? This is page 38 of the Indiana Masonic Monitor. It's also known as the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide. We're going to look down at the bottom of the page. It says, the legend of the third degree. This is the most important and significant of the legendary symbols of Freemasonry. It has descended from age to age by oral tradition and has been preserved in every Masonic rite practiced in any country or language with no essential alteration. So we have a document from the Grand Lodge of Indiana that clearly states that the legend of the third degree is the most important symbol of Freemasonry. There's more information on the legend of the third degree and on page 144 of the Indiana Masonic Monitor. Let's look again at the bottom of the page. And they write, it was the single object of all the ancient rites and mysteries practiced in the very bosom of pagan darkness to teach the immortality of the soul. This is still the great design of the third degree of Masonry. The top of the next page. This is the scope and aim of its ritual. By its legend and all its ritual, it is implied that we have been redeemed from the death of sin and the sepulchre of pollution. Now this is a book that's given to each and every Master Mason that's raised to Master Mason in the state of Indiana. Please pay careful attention. They tell each Master Mason that by its legend and all its ritual, it is implied that we have been redeemed from the death of sin and the sepulchre of pollution. Anything which is said to save a man from the death of sin constitutes a plan of salvation. I want to show you where that verbiage came from. Much of what we've just seen was originally written by Dr. Albert Mackey, a man who is acknowledged worldwide as one of Masonry's most respected authors. Here's the title page for a manual of the Lodge, or monitorial instructions. This book was published in 1862, however it is still in use today. The Grand Lodge of South Carolina has included the book in its entirety in their monitor, which is known as the Iman Reason. We're going to look at page 96 of Manual of the Lodge, but first of all I want to show you that it was indeed written by Dr. Albert G. Mackey, M.D. This is page 96 of Manual of the Lodge. The text we're interested in is in the center and at the bottom of the page. And we read, it was the single object of all the ancient rites and mysteries practiced in the very bosom of pagan darkness, shining as a solitary beacon in all that surrounding gloom and cheering the philosopher in his weary pilgrimage of life to teach the immortality of the soul. This is still the great design of the third degree of Masonry. This is the scope and aim of its ritual. By its legend and all its ritual, it is implied that we have been redeemed from the death of sin and the sepulchre of pollution. Now down a little further on the page at the bottom, Mackey writes, the important design of the degree is to symbolize the great doctrines of the resurrection of the body and the immortality of the soul. The Master Mason represents a man saved from the grave of iniquity and raised to the faith of salvation. Clearly what we're talking about here is a plan of salvation. Can the nature of Freemasonry be accurately understood without an understanding of the secret doctrine? Let's see what the Masonic authors say. Swinburne Clymer wrote The Mysticism of Masonry. Clymer is another of the medical doctors which are well-known Masonic authorities. This book was written sometime before 1924. This is page 48 of The Mysticism of Masonry. And Clymer writes in the center of the page, the secret doctrine is the complete philosophy of Masonic symbolism. Clymer's statement is accurate. The true nature of the Masonic Lodge cannot be understood without having an understanding of the secret doctrine. Masonic author George Steinmetz wrote The Lost Word, Its Hidden Meaning. The book was published in 1953 by the McCoy Masonic Publishing and Supply Company, the leading Masonic publisher. And we can see that is the fact down at the bottom. George Steinmetz has written a series of books which end with the phrase, its hidden meaning. We see Freemasonry, the hidden meaning, the Royal Arts, the hidden meaning. In The Lost Word, Its Hidden Meaning, he says it was written with the primary purpose of delving into the secret doctrine in Freemasonry. On page 10, chapter 2 is titled, The Secret Doctrine. We find the following. The secret doctrine, being the real secret of Freemasonry, is not divulged even to the candidate. There is no machinery set up in the ritual for the purpose, and the secret doctrine itself is not even acknowledged to exist. We're looking at page 11, the next page, and a little further down, Steinmetz writes, officially, the ritual is all that there is, and no Grand Lodge will go beyond that fact and attempt to define the teachings of Masonry, nor will any Grand Lodge, to my knowledge, admit the existence of the secret doctrine which is so openly discussed and written about by Masonic students and authorities on Masonic symbolism. Picking it up again on page 12 at the bottom, we read, the secret doctrine in Freemasonry cannot be too strongly stressed. Firstly, because there are those in the order who in their lack of knowledge claim that it does not exist. Secondly, because the seeking Mason can gain no further light than is shed by the ritual itself until he starts his quest for the real secrets of the hidden mysteries of Freemasonry, and they are found within the secret doctrine. What does the Grand Lodge of Indiana do to encourage the new Master Mason to discover the secret doctrine? Remember that each man that's raised to Master Mason in the state of Indiana is given a copy of the Indiana Monitor and Freemason's Guide, which is also known as the Indiana Masonic Monitor. On page 124 we find the following text. In the ceremonies of making a Mason, we do not attempt to do more than to indicate the pathway to Masonic knowledge. The brother must pursue the journey or complete the structure for himself by reading and reflection. Clearly, the Grand Lodge of Indiana tells new Masons that they are not being given all of the facts about Freemasonry, but must read and reflect to obtain a true understanding. Which books would a Mason read to learn about Freemasonry? Obviously, those written by Masonic authors. Do all Grand Lodges point the way to the secret doctrine in the same manner? Well, we're going to see that there are variations, slight variations from state to state, but in all cases they point the new Mason to Masonic books to learn more about Freemasonry. Here are several Masonic monitors. We don't have time to go through all of these, but this is the one for the Lodge of West Virginia. This is the Masonic Manual and Code. That's the Peach State, Georgia. This is the Im and Reason. This is the one that has Manual of the Lodge reproduced in its entirety, and I'll show you that here real quick. You can see that that does have Manual of the Lodge there, and it reproduces the entire book in its Monitor of South Carolina. Then we've got the Monitor from North Carolina. It's much smaller. We've got the Kentucky Monitor. That's from the Bluegrass State. We have the Michigan Monitor and Ceremonies. And then the Manual of Dayton Lodge number 147. There's slight variations in all of these monitors, and they have various names. I want to spend just a little bit of time with the Masonic textbook for the use of the Lodges of West Virginia. Now here's the title page, and we see that it is for use in the lodges under the jurisdiction of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of West Virginia. And we see down at the bottom that it's published by the Grand Lodge and it's dated 1919. Now this particular copy was given to a man in 1927. This is page 15 of the Masonic textbook for West Virginia, and we read, "The Masonic student of the future may, however, by careful study through its symbolism, discover and bring to light many of its lost characteristic features now hidden in the letter of its history and lessons as portrayed in the ancient manuscripts and repeated by Dr. Anderson." They are saying that by careful study more can be learned. Whose books would they have you study? Well, no doubt books written by Masonic authors. Would they care to recommend a few? Well, yes, they would. We read on page 25, "Brother Albert Pike, one of the most illustrious Masons in all the ages, and who was an acknowledged authority upon all Masonic questions." So they're lifting up Albert Pike as an acknowledged authority on all Masonic questions. Pike's writings. Who else would they recommend? Well, on page 19, they lift up Brother Albert G. Mackey of South Carolina. Now, we've already seen Mackey's Manual of the Lodge. We'll see more of his writings also. On page 16, they lift up a few more Masonic authors. Hunan, the first name on that line, I'd like you to remember. We're going to see some material from him in the second part. Gould, Drummond, and Albert Pike again. We're going to spend a little bit of time with the Kentucky Monitor also. This is the title page, and we can see at the bottom that it is arranged by Henry Purtle, who was a past master. That means a former worshipful master. Notice at the bottom it's copyrighted 1921 by the Standard Publishing Company. Since it's not published directly by the Grand Lodge of Kentucky, they can say just a bit more about things that are to be kept secret than some of the other monitors do. Like the Indiana Monitor, the Kentucky Monitor borrows much of its verbiage from books written by Masonic authorities, and those books and authors are listed in footnotes. I want to quickly show you some of those footnotes. Here on page XIV in the preface, they list morals and dogma in the footnotes. We've got Albert G. Mackey, the Encyclopedia of Masonry, listed in the footnotes on page XVI. And then on page XX, they've got Joseph Fort Newton, the builders, listed in the footnotes. This is the preface, which is entitled The Spirit of Masonry. Let's look a little bit about the purpose of this publication. The purpose and publication of the Kentucky Monitor has been to collect and present to the Lodge officers and interested brethren some of those comments which have been made by qualified brethren is such amplification of some portions of our ceremonies not otherwise sufficiently explained. All matter here included has been found in print elsewhere in proper sources. And we've already seen some of those proper sources. For example, Manual of the Lodge by Albert Mackey is widely quoted. Morals and Dogma is another one of those authoritative sources. The Encyclopedia of Freemasonry is another one. The Builders by Joseph Fort Newton, which are all in the footnotes, are all qualified sources. In the back of the Kentucky Monitor is a 41-page index, which helps us find many things in the Monitor. One entry is on the secret doctrine. You notice there's 17 pages that are listed as having information on the secret doctrine. Here's a typical passage about the secret doctrine found in the Kentucky Monitor. This, in short, is a synopsis of the story that Masonry attempts to tell. The secret doctrine completed from the wisdom of the ancient East. Page 20, we have another entry for the secret doctrine, and it reads, "So, my brother, Masonry teaches by allegories and symbols, and it is your part to extract from them the truths that will be of service to you in the building of an upright Masonic character." Again, what they're saying is that there is more to learn. This is Masonic Lodge Methods by L.B. Blakemore. It contains suggestions about the proper use of the Lodge Library and has a good bibliography in the back of it. We see from the flap that Blakemore is a past Grand Master of Ohio. That means he was head of the Grand Lodge. We're going to take a look at some text on page 43 at the bottom. Blakemore writes, "It is suggested that when a candidate has been raised, and while he is still in the master's care, the lodge librarian, or the chaplain, or the master himself should address him somewhat as follows. I herewith present you with a Masonic book which I have borrowed for you from our lodge library, or other Masonic library. You will read it and return it, and secure another one, and so continue your search for more light in Masonry." This is impressive and figures in the candidate's mind as part of his initiation, and starts him out on a search for more Masonic light and information. The book presented should be an interesting one, carefully selected with a view to his ability to appreciate it. So we see that the lodge library and the Masonic books that are contained in them plays a very important part in educating the new Master Mason about the deeper meanings of Masonry. The secret doctrine is well documented in Masonic libraries. This library is at the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. Even this room is not large enough to hold all of the Masonic books which have been written. The many rooms at the House of the Temple hold over 200,000 volumes. A typical lodge would not have a library which would compare with this room alone. Some small lodges do not have a library at all, but all grand lodges do. This is the catalog of the McCoy Publishing and Masonic Supply Company, the leading Masonic publisher. This page from McCoy's catalog shows that many grand lodges present a copy of the builders to each man who is raised to Master Mason. Raised is used in the sense of raised from the dead. We'll cover this later. We've already seen the builders in the footnotes of the Kentucky Monitor. This is a copy of the builders by Joseph Fort Newton. I want you to notice the book plate that's on the inside. It says, "Presented to William E. Barrowman on being raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason this 30th day of October, 1916. And it was presented by Lafayette Lodge number 265, Free and Accepted Masons in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it's signed by the Worshipful Master." So we have evidence here that, in fact, many lodges do present copies of the builders to Master Masons when they're raised to the degree of Master Mason. Masonic books are vital to educating Master Masons about the secret doctrine. However, they present a bit of a dilemma for the lodge when they fall into the wrong hands. This book was written by Albert Pike. He wrote the Rituals of the Scottish Rite, and this book was written for the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree and published by its authority. Now, we're down further on the page, we see that this is an esoteric book. They claim for Scottish Rite use only, and is to be returned upon withdrawal or death of the recipient. So this is the book that they want to get back so that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Now we know from the Kentucky Monitor, the footnotes, that Morals and Dogma is also used in the Blue Lodge. What is the reaction of the lodge when Masonic books fall into the hands of someone like a fundamentalist Christian? First of all, what is a fundamentalist Christian? Well, a simple definition would be someone who believes the fundamentals of the Christian faith. Things like the virgin birth of Jesus, the fact that Jesus is God, he took upon himself the form of a man and was without sin. He was crucified, buried, and then raised from the dead. He ascended into heaven, and he is coming back. Those sorts of things. This issue of the Scottish Rite Journal has a good example of typical Masonic methods which are used when someone stumbles onto writings which reveal things they don't want known.